Many of us know about the history and origin of Israel, especially from the Bible. But did you know that Iran is also mentioned? And how many of us remember when the word Prince of Persia was used? Although that might be an interesting fact to explore, today, our focus is on the origin and history of Iran as a nation. We're going to take a deep dive into its past, uncovering some aspects of its history that don't usually make it into the headlines of Fox News or mainstream Western media. In this video, we'll explore Iran's rich cultural heritage, its ancient civilizations, the rise of the Persian Empire, and how modern-day Iran became the country we know today. So, if you think you know Iran, or if you've only heard snippets in the media, stick around. This story is much more layered and fascinating than you might expect. What if I told you that while your ancestors were probably still figuring out which end of a spear was pointy, there was already an advanced civilization building cities that would make modern architects weep with envy? Welcome to ancient Elam, circa 3000 BC. These weren't your typical cavemen turned farmers. The Elamites were the Silicon Valley entrepreneurs of the ancient world. Except instead of coding apps, they were coding the future of human civilization. Picture walking through their capital city of Susa. Towering ziggurats pierce the sky like ancient skyscrapers, their mud brick walls gleaming in the desert sun. Merchants haggle in languages you've never heard, selling goods from places that wouldn't be discovered by Europeans for another 4,000 years. The sound of hammers rings through workshops where artisans are creating bronze masterpieces so intricate that when archaeologists found them, they initially thought they were fake because ancient people couldn't possibly make something this sophisticated. But here's the kicker. The Elamites had something that every empire for the next 5 millennia would literally kill for. Location, location, location. Iran sits at the intersection of 3 continents like the world's most exclusive nightclub, and the Elamites were the original bouncers. Want to trade Chinese silk for Roman gold? You go through Iran. Need to move Indian spices to Egyptian markets? Iran's your middleman. It's like controlling the world's Wi-Fi password, except the internet is made of caravans and the data is actual treasure. Now, fast forward about 2,000 years to when things get really spicy. Enter the Medes, and these guys had attitude. Around 700 BC, while everyone else was playing small ball tribal politics, the Medes looked at the Iranian plateau and said, "You know what this place needs? A proper empire." They weren't just another wandering tribe. They were visionaries with a plan and the military muscle to back it up. The Medes' big break came when they decided to take on the neighborhood bully, the Assyrian Empire. Now, the Assyrians were basically the ancient world's version of that kid in school who pulled wings off flies for fun, except they did it to entire civilizations. They had perfected psychological warfare to an art form. Their propaganda literally said things like, "Surrender now, or we'll make pyramids out of your skulls." And they weren't bluffing. But the Medes teamed up with the Babylonians and pulled off what historians call one of the most shocking upsets in ancient history. In 612 BC, they destroyed Nineveh, the Assyrian capital, so thoroughly that for centuries afterward, people thought it was a myth. The city that had terrorized the known world for 300 years was wiped off the map so completely that when Napoleon's archaeologists went looking for it, they couldn't even find the ruins. And that's when our story gets absolutely wild. Meet Cyrus, born around 600 BC to a Persian noble family. Now, Cyrus's origin story reads like something George Lucas would reject for being too over the top. His grandfather, King Astyages of the Medes, has a nightmare that his infant grandson will one day overthrow him. So naturally, Granddad orders a hit on the baby, because apparently, no one in ancient times ever watched a movie where trying to prevent a prophecy is exactly how you make it come true. The royal executioner can't bring himself to murder a baby, so he hands Cyrus off to a shepherd. The kid grows up in the mountains, completely unaware he's royalty, but displaying this weird, supernatural ability to make people want to follow him. At age 10, he's organizing village games so well that visiting nobles are asking, "Who is this kid?" By 15, he's mediating disputes between tribes. It's like he was born with a cheat code for leadership. When Cyrus finally learns his true identity and returns to claim his birthright, his grandfather tries to have him killed again. Fatal mistake. In 550 BC, Cyrus doesn't just defeat his grandfather. He does something that breaks every rule in the ancient conquest handbook. Instead of the typical kill everyone and burn their stuff approach, Cyrus invents mercy. When he conquers Babylon, imagine taking over New York, London, and Tokyo simultaneously, he does the unthinkable. He frees the slaves, all of them, including the Jewish exiles who had been stuck there for 70 years. But that's not even the crazy part. He tells everyone they can keep their own religions, their own customs, their own languages. He creates what historians now recognize as the world's first human rights charter, carved on a clay cylinder that basically says everyone deserves dignity, regardless of where they come from. This was so radical that other kings probably thought Cyrus had suffered a head injury. Imagine if a modern dictator took over a country and his first act was to throw a massive welcome party for everyone he'd just conquered. That's how insane Cyrus's approach seemed to his contemporaries. But here's where it gets beautiful. It worked. People didn't just submit to Persian rule, they volunteered for it. Word spread across the ancient world. These Persians are different. They don't destroy your temples, they pay to rebuild them. They don't steal your children, they educate them. They don't don't erase your culture, they celebrate it. Under Cyrus and his successors, the Persian Empire expanded faster than a TikTok trend. Cyrus conquered Lydia and its famously wealthy king Croesus, literally the richest man in the world at the time. The phrase, rich as Croesus, comes from this guy, and Cyrus took him down like he was collecting pocket change. Then came Babylon, the ancient world's crown jewel, falling to Persian forces like a house of cards in a hurricane. But wait, it gets better. Darius I takes over and turns this vast collection of conquered territories into the most sophisticated government system the world had ever seen. Picture this, an empire stretching from India to Egypt to Greece. That's like controlling everything from New York to Los Angeles to Mexico City to Montreal, except with camels instead of airplanes and handwritten messages instead of cell phones. Darius creates satrapies. Think of them as ancient states, each run by a governor who reports directly to the king. He builds the Royal Road, a 1,600-mile highway system with rest stops, supply stations, and the world's first postal service. Messages could travel from one end of the empire to the other in 7 days. That's faster than most medieval European kingdoms could communicate across a single country. And then they build Persepolis. Oh, Persepolis. Imagine if Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and every Hollywood producer got together and said, let's build something so magnificent that people 5,000 years from now will think we were gods. That's Persepolis. Massive staircases carved from living rock, columns so tall they disappear into the clouds, walls covered in reliefs showing tribute bearers from every corner of the known world bringing gifts to the Persian king. It wasn't just a palace, it was a statement carved in stone that said, we are the center of the universe, and everyone knows it. But every superhero story needs a villain, and Persia's came from the most unlikely place, a collection of tiny, constantly squabbling Greek city-states that couldn't agree on what to have for breakfast, let alone how to run an empire. The trouble started when some Greek cities in modern-day Turkey rebelled against Persian rule, and Athens had the audacity to help them. Darius was not amused. Nobody disrespected the Persian Empire and lived to tell about it. In 490 BC, he sends a minor expedition to teach these Greeks some manners. The expedition was only minor by Persian standards. We're talking about an army larger than the entire population of most Greek cities. And then the impossible happened. At Marathon, a small Athenian army, outnumbered nearly 2 to 1, charged across the battlefield screaming like banshees and absolutely demolished the Persian forces. The Persians, who had never lost a major battle, were so shocked they literally forgot to fight back for the first few minutes. The news was so unbelievable that the Athenians sent their fastest runner, Phidippides, racing 26 miles back to Athens to announce the victory. He burst into the city shouting, "We won!" and then promptly dropped dead from exhaustion, giving us the marathon race and proving that good news can literally kill you. Darius died before he could get his revenge, but his son Xerxes was determined to finish what Daddy started. And Xerxes didn't just plan an invasion, he planned the end of the world as the Greeks knew it. In 480 BC, he assembled an army so massive that when ancient historians wrote about it, people accused them of making it up. We're talking about potentially 200,000 soldiers, plus support staff, plus camp followers, plus enough ships to make the sea black with sails. This wasn't just an army, it was a migration. Xerxes had engineers build a pontoon bridge across the Hellespont, literally connecting Asia to Europe with boats. When a storm destroyed the first bridge, Xerxes was so angry he ordered his soldiers to whip the sea 300 times as punishment. Yes, he ordered the ocean arrested for insubordination. The early stages went exactly as planned. The famous last stand at Thermopylae, where 300 Spartans and their allies held off the entire Persian army for 3 days, ended with Persian victory, though not before the Spartans made it so expensive that Xerxes probably wished he'd stayed home. Athens was captured and burned in revenge for Marathon. But then Xerxes made the classic supervillain mistake. He got cocky. At Salamis, the Greek fleet, led by an Athenian general named Themistocles, who was basically the ancient world's version of a chess grandmaster, lured the massive Persian navy into a narrow strait where numbers didn't matter. The result was a naval disaster so complete that Xerxes reportedly sat on a hill overlooking the battle and watched his dreams of world conquest literally sink into the Mediterranean. Without naval support, Xerxes couldn't supply his massive army, and he was forced to retreat, leaving behind a smaller force that the Greeks promptly destroyed at Plataea. The mighty Persian war machine, which had seemed unstoppable, had been broken by a bunch of Greeks who couldn't even agree on which gods to worship. But here's the thing about the Persians. They were like that friend who gets knocked down in a fight, dusts themselves off, and says, "Okay, that was a good warm-up." The Persian Empire didn't collapse after the Greek debacle. It adapted, learned, and continued to be a major power for another century and a half, often controlling Greek politics through diplomacy and gold, even when they couldn't do it through swords and arrows. Then, in 334 BC, a 22-year-old Macedonian king named Alexander crossed into Asia with an army of just 35,000 men and changed everything. Alexander wasn't just another Greek leader seeking revenge for the Persian Wars. This kid had absorbed every military innovation of his generation, combined them with his own tactical genius, and wrapped it all up in a personality so magnetic that his soldiers would literally follow him to the ends of the earth, which they did. Alexander's conquest of the Persian Empire reads like a video game where someone figured out all the cheat codes. At the Granicus River, he announced his arrival by personally leading a cavalry charge across a defended river crossing. At Issus, he faced Darius III himself and won so decisively that he captured the Persian king's family and treasure train. At Gaugamela, in what might be the most tactically perfect battle in military history, he shattered Persian power forever. But Alexander did something unprecedented with his victory. He fell in love with Persian culture. He married Persian princesses, adopted Persian court customs, and encouraged his soldiers to marry Persian women. When his Macedonian veterans complained that he was going native, Alexander basically told them, "I'm not just conquering an empire, I'm creating a new world." When Alexander died suddenly in Babylon in 323 BC, possibly from poisoning, possibly from fever, possibly from drinking himself to death celebrating another victory, his empire immediately fragmented among his generals. But the cultural fusion he had started continued under his successors, creating a Hellenistic world where Greek and Persian traditions blended in ways that influenced civilization for centuries. Yet Persian identity survived even under Greek rule. In the eastern provinces, Persian nobles maintained their authority, Persian customs flourished, and Persian language and literature continued to develop. When the Parthians, another Iranian people, began challenging Seleucid Greek rule in the 3rd century BC, they found fertile ground among populations that had never fully accepted foreign domination. The Parthians were everything the Achaemenids weren't. Where the early Persians had been diplomats and administrators, the Parthians were warriors and horsemen. Their heavy cavalry, encased in armor from head to toe, became the stuff of legend. Their signature move, the Parthian shot, firing arrows while retreating, was so effective it entered the language as a metaphor for any parting blow. For nearly 500 years, the Parthians proved they could go toe-to-toe with Rome itself. At Carrhae in 53 BC, a Parthian army annihilated 7 Roman legions and killed Marcus Crassus, one of Rome's most powerful leaders. They sent Crassus's head to the Parthian king, who was watching a Greek play at the time. The actor playing Agave in the Bacchae used Crassus's actual severed head as a prop, turning a Roman disaster into Persian dinner theater. But by the 3rd century AD, constant warfare with Rome had exhausted the Parthians, and internal succession disputes had weakened their grip on power. Enter the Sassinids, who claimed direct descent from the original Achaemenid kings and promised to restore Persian glory to its ancient heights. The Sassinids didn't just talk a big game, they delivered. Under rulers like Ardashir and Shapur-Ur, they revitalized Persian culture, made Zoroastrianism the official religion, and built an administrative system that rivaled Rome's. Shapur I was so confident in Persian superiority that he captured not 1 but 3 Roman emperors, using one of them as a human footstool when mounting his horse. For over 400 years, Sassanid Persia was Rome's only real equal, the only empire that could meet Roman legions in battle and expect to win. Their influence stretched from Yemen to the Caucasus, from Mesopotamia to Central Asia. They preserved and transmitted Greek philosophy, developed Persian literature to new heights, and created architectural marvels that influenced Islamic art for centuries to come. But then, in the 7th century, everything changed. Out of the Arabian desert came Arab armies carrying a new religion called Islam, and they moved like lightning across the map. The Battle of Qadisiyah in 636 AD broke Sassanid military power, but it took another 15 years of hard fighting before organized Persian resistance ended. The Arab conquest of Persia was like watching a civilization die and be reborn simultaneously. Persian Zoroastrian priests were replaced by Muslim clerics, Persian fire temples became mosques, and Persian nobles either converted to Islam or lost their power. But Persian culture didn't disappear, it transformed. Persian converts brought their administrative skills, literary traditions, and artistic sensibilities into the Islamic world. Under the Abbasid Caliphate, Persians essentially ran the Islamic Empire from behind the scenes. The Abbasid capital at Baghdad was built by Persian architects, administered by Persian bureaucrats, and defended by Persian soldiers. But Persians never lost their hunger for independence. In eastern Iran, local dynasties like the Sassinids established autonomous rule while nominally acknowledging the caliph's authority. Under Samanid patronage, Persian literature experienced a renaissance that produced epic poetry so magnificent it's still being read today. The greatest of these works was Ferdowsi's Shahnameh, the Book of Kings, containing over 50,000 verses telling the story of Persian heroes and kings from the dawn of time to the Arab conquest. When Ferdowsi completed this masterpiece, he had essentially preserved the soul of Persian identity in verse, ensuring that even if Persia the country disappeared, Persia the idea would survive forever. Wave after wave of conquerors followed. Seljuk Turks, who paradoxically became more Persian than the Persians. Mongols, who destroyed cities so thoroughly that some have never recovered. Various local dynasties that rose and fell like flowers in a desert spring. Each wave seemed to threaten Persian identity, and each time, Persian Persian culture proved remarkably resilient, absorbing influences while maintaining its essential character. Then, in 1501, came the Safavids, and everything changed again. Shah Ismail didn't just restore Persian independence. He created a new form of Persian identity by making Shia Islam the official religion of his state. This wasn't just a religious decision. It was a political masterstroke that set Persia apart from its Sunni neighbors and created a distinct Iranian identity within the broader Islamic world. The conversion to Shia Islam was often forced and sometimes violent, but it worked. Under Shah Abbas I, who ruled from 1588 to 1629, the Safavid Empire reached its zenith. Abbas moved the capital to Isfahan and transformed it into one of the world's most beautiful cities. The saying, "Isfahan is half the world," captured the city's magnificence. Imagine Paris, Rome, and New York rolled into one and covered in the most exquisite Islamic architecture ever created. But the Safavids' greatest achievement was creating a synthesis of Persian nationalism and Shia Islam that would define Iranian identity for the next 500 years. They were Persian, they were Muslim, they were Shia, and they were proud of all three identities simultaneously. The Safavid Empire eventually declined and fell to Afghan invaders in 1722, leading to decades of chaos and foreign intervention. Various leaders tried to restore Persian power. Nader Shah conquered territories from India to the Caucasus, but built his empire on conquest rather than stable institutions. The Zand dynasty brought a brief period of enlightened rule, but couldn't resist the rising power of the Qajars. The Qajar period, from 1794 to 1925, was characterized by weak rulers, foreign interference, and national humiliation. Russia and Britain treated Iran like a chess piece in their great game for control of Central Asia. Iran lost vast territories and was forced to grant humiliating concessions to European powers. But the Qajar period also saw the birth of modern Iranian nationalism. The constitutional revolution of 1905 to 1911 was Iran's first serious attempt at democratic government, and though it ultimately failed, it established ideas about popular sovereignty that would influence Iranian politics for decades to come. World War I brought further chaos, but it also created the conditions for Iran's next transformation. In 1921, Reza Khan, a military officer, seized power and began modernizing Iran along the lines of Kemalist Turkey. In 1925, he crowned himself Reza Shah Pahlavi and embarked on an ambitious program of modernization. Reza Shah built roads and railways, established modern schools and universities, created a professional military, and promoted industry and commerce. In 1935, he officially changed the country's name from Persia to Iran, emphasizing its Aryan heritage. But his modernization came at the cost of increasing authoritarianism and growing opposition from traditional religious authorities. World War II ended Reza Shah's reign when Britain and the Soviet Union occupied Iran and forced him to abdicate in favor of his son, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. The new Shah's reign, lasting from 1941 to 1979, was marked by increasing American influence, ambitious modernization programs funded by oil revenues, and growing internal opposition. By the 1970s, opposition to the Shah was growing among religious conservatives, leftist intellectuals, and middle-class Iranians demanding greater political participation. Iran's oil wealth had made the country rich, but the benefits were unevenly distributed, creating resentment among those left behind by rapid modernization. The spark that ignited the Iranian Revolution came in January 1978 with protests against an article attacking Ayatollah Khomeini, the exiled religious leader who had become the most prominent critic of the Shah's regime. What began as religious protests quickly broadened into a general uprising that united diverse groups in opposition to the Shah's rule. By late 1978, massive demonstrations were paralyzing the country. In January 1979, the Shah left Iran, never to return. On February 1st, Ayatollah Khomeini returned from exile to a rapturous welcome from millions of Iranians. Within days, revolutionary forces had taken control, and on April 1st, 1979, Khomeini declared the establishment of the Islamic Republic of Iran. The Iranian Revolution was more than just a change of government. It was a complete transformation of Iranian society and Iran's place in the world. The new Islamic Republic combined traditional Shia religious authority with modern revolutionary ideology, creating a unique form of government that challenged both Western democracy and Soviet socialism. The revolution had profound international consequences, leading to the Iran hostage crisis, the devastating Iran-Iraq war, and ongoing tensions with the United States and regional rivals. Today's Iran remains a product of this long and complex history, a country that has maintained its distinct identity through millennia of conquest and change, currently expressing that identity through the unique synthesis of Persian nationalism and Shia Islam created by the Islamic Republic. From ancient Elam to the Islamic Republic, Iran's story is ultimately one of remarkable resilience and cultural continuity. Despite conquest, conversion, and repeated attempts at transformation, Iran has never lost its essential character. It remains a civilization that has consistently punched above its weight in regional and world affairs, a country whose influence extends far beyond its borders through culture, religion, and politics. Understanding Iran's history is crucial to understanding not just Iran itself, but the broader patterns of Middle Eastern politics and the ongoing struggles that shape our modern world. It's a reminder that nations are more than just political constructs. They're complex weaves of history, culture, religion, and shared memory that can survive even the most dramatic transformations. If you enjoyed learning about the history of Iran and want to dive deeper into the history of other countries or empires, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel.